So you're probably aware of the so-called Big Beautiful Bill, this new tax legislation that's been approved and is now law, takes effect from 2025 through 2028. And there was quite a few parts to this. I mean, the first one that seemed, a lot of it is related to divorce and family law, which is the type of work that I do. I'm a divorce family law attorney. I'm not a tax expert or anything like that, but it certainly affects all of us, and it does affect our clients that are going through a divorce or about to start a divorce, or even never married and splitting up, and there's child support sort of issues. A lot of this affects that group of people, which is a pretty big, group, obviously. So, first thing I noticed in it that caught my eye was the no tax on tips. So you have to work at a job that's qualified as normally receiving tips, and then you have up to $25,000 in a year that you can deduct. So it's not really an exemption, so to speak, but it's basically you don't have to claim $25,000 worth of tips in a given year, and that continues through 2028 at this point. So that means if you're dealing with somebody in a divorce case, or even if you're not married, if there's a child support issue and you're calculating their income, now you're in a place where that income is not taxed. So it definitely means more. If I'm getting divorced from someone and they work as a hairstylist or a waitress or one of these typical kind of things where you get a lot of tips, now not only are we looking at what the tips are, but they also aren't taxed on it. So they're making more money than it would even seem. Somebody that's waitress, hairstylist, something that's receiving tips, somebody that's making $30,000 a year doing that, it's really a higher number now because a portion of that is tips, and those are no longer going to be taxed. There's also a component of this that overtime has to qualify, and depends on the categories that you got to qualify with what the tax bill says about it. But if you're working in a job that typically is paid overtime, you now have an exemption on being taxed on your overtime portion of your wages up to $12,500 a year. So the simple way of saying it would be up to $12,500 worth of your income that was paid to you as overtime is now not going to be taxed. But the downside to that is it's really the same story. It's also untaxed, so really you made more money even than it looks like. That $12,500 is now tax-free to you. That's a higher number. You'd have to look at, well, how much would I have to make to end up with $12,500, right? So, that could easily be closer to 20 grand. So we got to figure out how this is all going to work with child support calculations, alimony calculations. How do you factor this in? I mean, the short answer is the software we use to calculate child support. There's also software for spousal support, but nobody's really bound by it. No one's required to use it. But for child support, there's software, and now it's going to have to be built into the software how to take this new tax bill into account, whether you're dealing with someone that is receiving tips, and those are no longer taxed, so now they really earn a little more than it looks like because they have some untaxed income, which is the best kind, right? And then, or if someone that has overtime and up to $12,500 of their overtime is not going to be taxed, that number is a little higher than it might at first seem too. So those are the first two things that jumped out to me about it as far as divorce and family law work. There's also the $1,000 for a baby that's born between now and 2028. So anybody, U.S. citizen that has a child, there's now $1,000 that's going to get somehow set aside by the government and put into an account. It sounds like the big requirement on that is you have to set up a social security number that puts them in the system. There will then be $1,000 put aside for that child by the federal government, and they're still working out how all this works and the funding and exactly what we're dealing with. But basically, you have $1,000 per child born between now and 2028 that is going to be free money to you. There's going to be an account set up, and that money will be intended for the baby, but will be put in the name of the guardian or parent of that child, and then they'll release, I'm sure, more details about exactly how that works and what control you have and how it's invested and when you can get the money. But the point is, it's going to be $1,000 set aside for you by the government on a baby that's born. There's also a no tax on car loan interest as part of this, which does affect divorcing clients as well. Most of the clients we meet with, at least one of them has a car payment. There's now going to be a deduction on car payments, not being able to not be taxed on car loan interest is really kind of what they're doing. So remains to be seen how all this really will work, what's needed to qualify for some of these things. But needless to say, there's a lot to this. It's kind of a big topic, but I wanted to at least give you some highlights on it. There's also some deductions for seniors. There's a lot of affirming the 2017 or 2018 tax legislation that was in place has now been, a lot of that's been kept in place, which is good. One of which was the standard deduction, because the vast majority of people are not itemizing on their taxes. They're stuck with the standard deduction. So this legislation affirms the standard deduction amount, that will stay the same, at least for now. Really all of this is just through 2028. Even if they said it was permanent, somebody can come in the next legislation, and it's always possible to change things. But that's kind of a quick summary of what this is, what to expect, and how we're looking at some ways that it's going to apply to divorce and family law. Thanks.